This episode is brought to you by Indeed. Stop waiting around for the perfect candidate. Instead, use Indeed sponsored jobs to find the right people with the right skills fast. It's a simple way to make sure your listing is the first candidates see. According to Indeed data, sponsored jobs have 4 times more applicants than non-sponsored jobs. So go build your dream team today with Indeed. Get a $75 sponsored job credit at Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply.
Every story you love, every invention that moves you, every idea you wished was yours, all began as nothing. Just a blank page with a blinking cursor, asking a simple question. What do you see? Great ideas start on Mac. Find out more on apple.com/Mac.
I listened to some things about this one, and I'm curious. We'll see how it.
I found that in reading about it too. That I was like, I think a lot of these people miss the point, but I guess you could read it as a thing about what any. I mean, it's a great movie. It's actually genuinely very good, which means there's way more to say about this movie than Gattaca. But
don't shit talk Nichols' vision.
Too late.
All right,
we're literally on tape shit talking Nichols' vision.
I was gonna say we did it for like two and a half hours or something, so too late for that.
He was he alive? I don't remember now. I'm sure he did.
I think so.
Yeah.
I think he's not that old. I think
I
Cronenberg's older.
I doubt that guy gives a shit what we would have to say.
He might, but also what are the odds? Kind of good problem to have, quite frankly. If he's listening to Left of the Projector, maybe he's left curious. I don't know.
Yes, if any director out there listens to the episode that I do about them or any other one, you can give me an email, shoot me an email at leftoftheprojector@gmail.com, and you can come on and you can yell at me for my bad takes about your film.
You heard it here first. I would love if Andrew Nichols was like, you know what? I'm going to be a leftist. I'm going to check out this leftist podcast about my film. And then we're just on here being like, this fucking centrist neoliberal piece of shit.
I would have on pretty much any director or actor that's in an episode that I've done as a guest, even if they have shitty politics, and I would be polite as I could and just,
Sure.
I wouldn't have James Woods on though. I don't think.
I don't know.
Yeah,
I mean, now I have questions about him, but Evan, should we let you do the intro?
Yeah, I'll do the idea. This is my, someone has to rein me in.
Sit back in your seats, get something to eat, and watch this movie. Don't let the kiddies see it, because, well, we'll let you hear the beginning first. Thank you.
Hello and welcome to Left of the Projector. I'm your host, Evan, back again with another film discussion from the left. This week on the show, we are covering our first David Cronenberg film. Yes, it's true. The film in question is Videodrome, released in 1983. It stars James Woods, Sonia Smits, Deborah Harry, and was an absolute box office bomb, making a mere $2 million on its $5 million Canadian budget, so I guess it's even less. Despite that, it has gained cult status, as we will soon see, and is very relevant. Joining me to discuss, I have back on the show Chris and Wythe of Why We Roll podcast. Thank you both for coming on again.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Hey, thanks for having us.
Always a pleasure.
And if you listened to our last episode, which we did the film Gattaca, we talked, I think at the end, we're like, I wonder what Cronenberg film we're going to do. And then I don't know if it was during that or afterwards, we landed on Videodrome. So I'm curious, is this your favorite Cronenberg film?
Yeah. I think I am on record from our last episode saying that this is my favorite Cronenberg film. But honestly, watching it again and having watched several of his films from kind of the same time period at the time recently, in the last 6 months or so, I might walk that back a bit. I don't know which one's my favorite, but definitely Wythe, I think in your notes, you called it the New Flesh era. That kind of, there's an arc of films. I think that all of those together, Scanners into Videodrome, into The Fly, that kind of intersection of technology and body is persistent throughout all those.
From Scanners to Existence. I mean, I agree. I like the biopunk avant la lettre stuff the most. And this is probably my favorite, but I say that having watched almost all of his movies except the last two, just because I kind of got old and busy and forgot that he existed. But I've watched them all a lot, but I haven't watched them in a while. So I really love Videodrome, and rewatching it really holds up. So if you haven't watched it, definitely watch it. But now I'm just like, wait, will they all hold up? Will I get new things out of them? It might just be that when I was younger and like half paid attention when Scanners was on, it wouldn't count as a watch in the same way that I've like watched Videodrome like a bunch of times.
Yeah.
So I think it's kind of unfair to say. I just agree with Chris. It's like there's a bunch of, he makes excellent movies overall. The Russian fighty ones, also good. The historical ones, okay. I mean, political take-wise, that's a discussion for another day, but okay. But this one and all the ones around it, from probably, I guess, really the earliest, Shivers or whatever, all the way up to through Existence are just great. And even the media associated. I mean, the remake of Dead Ringers is excellent. And I think so much of this movie is still extremely relevant and really has kind of continued some of the critique of like the novels of William Burroughs and stuff. And brought it to new audiences. So I'm really glad that for whatever reason, this movie did become a cult hit, and even though it lost a bunch of Canadian dollars.
To be fair, I would say that it's probably like my current favorite, only because I've watched it several times for this, and then I watched it maybe like 8 months ago, maybe a year ago, just catching up on, some of his old films, or maybe they were on Criterion. I don't remember if he had a bunch of them on there. I think Dead Ringers is on there too. But I would always typically say The Fly is my favorite Cronenberg film, just as just a body horror in that and everything. But Videodrome might be, as you said, Wythe, it's very relevant, as we'll talk about, and I think it holds up extremely well. The only thing that maybe doesn't hold up is James Woods as a person is not a great person. He
the only thing that doesn't hold up is James Woods' personality.
Yeah, he. I mean, maybe he was like a shitty person then; it just wasn't known, and now he complains that Hollywood won't hire him when it's really just he's just also not apparently good to work with either, which I suspect also is probably the main thing. Directors don't want to work with people who are just impossible, but
it's even more fun if you imagine the movie was just like verite, like they just got James
That's
Woods
what I was just thinking.
He thought it was all like real.
Yeah.
That's a very different take. But like, who knows? I wasn't there. I was almost born, but not quite born, and not Canadian. So unfortunately.
Yeah, I didn't get a chance to look to as much as I wanted to into some of like the production and how they chose, but I think that the producers wanted, this is on Wikipedia, but they suggested James Wood as the character, and at first I don't think he was going to do it, and then he kind of changed his mind, and I don't know. It sounded like they just liked the way that he delivered his lines. He just kind of has like a weird fellow. So, he works in this, whether he's a good person,
Yeah. Well, the character to get into the movie is not a good person, right? So it kind of makes sense. You would just want like a handsome, domineering jerk. And I think there's different ways you could have cast that. And I have no idea, again, about Cronenberg's relationship with Woods, but it definitely works in terms of the performance, where he's not supposed to be a likable protagonist. It's just you're seeing it from his perspective very much.
Yeah. I was going to ask earlier if we thought that James Woods was specifically typecast for this film, but it seems like, Evan, the answer is yes, he absolutely was typecast for the film.
Yeah, and it's weird when I look at his career arc of like films he's in such a he actually is in like a very vast range of films. It's kind of I don't know. I mean, I actually didn't realize he was an executive producer on Oppenheimer, which I only found this out earlier today when I was looking at his Wikipedia page, which surprised me. I guess him and Nolan are friends.
It's kind of interesting in regards to Videodrome.
Well, so let's talk about the film, but I'm just going to give like a very brief synopsis, just as kind of a sketching out, kind of, as you mentioned, James Wood plays this character named Max Ren, who's a president of like a small Toronto television studio called Studio 80, Channel 83. And he's basically
Civic TV.
Civic TV, right? And he's to put context on the station he runs, it's basically, softcore porn and related material that's, not really, they have a very niche audience, I would imagine, in Toronto for this kind of content. And he's trying to find, something new to put on his station. And one of his, showrunners, or I don't know his official title, his coworker who scours satellites for, illegal TV and things they could put on, finds this show called Videodrome, which is supposedly from Malaysia. We later learn it's not from Malaysia. And it's this, victims of violence and torture, and he thinks it's all acting. So he wants to find out how to put this show onto his TV. And he, slowly things unravel. And I think one of the main, scenes that we definitely will talk about is he goes onto a TV show and is interviewed by kind of a TV host, and he kind of gets it gets a little bit weird, and I think some of the politics come out in that. And, really what kind of drives the rest of the film is him watching more of Videodrome, starting to have hallucinations, and getting caught up in a plot of just... We'll get into that, and we'll of just insanity. And if you know Cronenberg films, there's going to be insane, visual effects and practical effects primarily, and they are awesome in this film.
Yeah,
that's
great.
They're incredible.
So, one of the first things I was thinking about, since I think we've all said that it's like a relevant film today. Like, you see this movie, 1983, and the kind of that we think about, this is when Ronald Reagan is taking the White House, which I think will play into a scene that happens later on. And we think of like the media in 2025. What do you all think of like how you would, compare how the media and, is depicted in this versus like what we see today, Like, do you see them as like a parallel? Is it sort of like the logical, like we're now at the logical conclusion of what Cronenberg was talking about then?
Well, I think that's my whole take on it. Is it's very prescient, and it's much deeper than most sort of movies that at first glance read like kind of Luddite critiques. So before we get into the spoiler territory, there's a kind of conspiracy and just a deep kind of weird, problematic kind of vibe regarding televisual technology, watching TV signals and having video cassettes. And that's a big theme in the movie that becomes weirder and weirder as the movie goes. And I think that could be read in a long line of just like sci-fi and movies that like, try to sort of equate technological evolution with kind of dumbing down of human minds and human culture, and also increasing control of kind of the state and big corporations. And there's nothing, completely wrong with that. It's just kind of like a facile read of like, yeah, sure, that's true. But I think this movie gets at a lot deeper thoughts about like what new technologies do to our minds. And it does it through visualizing it as like the guy's body is changing, which is, exactly the Cronenberg move. It's like in The Fly, like in all these kind of arch new flesh biopunk movies, we're seeing externalized like changes at the level of feeling and thought as well. I mean, the body changes are treated in a very real way, even though I think in this movie we're not meant to know if they're hallucinations. Like, is it real or is the guy just wigging out?
Yeah,
but I think that
ambiguous.
There's something... Yeah, and I think that basically that critique is very, very real in the age of social media and smartphones, which again, Cronenberg couldn't have known about really, but hey, he nailed it. Yeah. And the fact that it's not a facile critique, it's not an easy, it's just bad or just good. It's like, this is changing us, and maybe we need to think about how it's changing us as opposed to saying, because basically it's not going to go away, right? And I think, Videodrome starts with kind of this assumption, people love TV, and people are going to watch a fuckload of TV. And kind of what does that mean, right? And I think it goes in a weird, it gets weird with it, but that's only become more true. I watch way too much TV, so I'll just say it,
Yeah, it's interesting. There's also there's a kind of like playful ambivalence about technology that runs through a lot of Cronenberg's work, and I feel like you see that a lot here. And even our main character. And I was reading an article that I think it was Criterion Collection, but they say that specifically Cronenberg says that the movie is a point of view film, so you're seeing everything from Max's perspective. And it even starts out with an ambivalence towards technology, which you see in the scene, Evan, that you were referencing, where they're having the debate on television. And where am I going with this? Something about ambivalence towards technology. What I was going to say is that even though he's peddling tech, and he's peddling the content that he's peddling. The character himself in that interview scene is just like, well, I don't know. It's a good time. We're just trying to cut through the noise. Well, I don't really consume it. I'm not a bad guy. But then as the film goes on, you do see that like he is as much a victim to the machinations of television as anybody else, right? Like he falls asleep at 3 a.m. watching TV, wakes up to it, all of that stuff.
Yeah, that I think, I don't know if you said this right before we started, or maybe you said already, is that a lot of the articles that I found, I read a bunch of, most of them were like short little essays, tended to take the very surface level analysis of like media and TV and didn't really like look at it, below that line, or, in a deeper sense that I think that Cronenberg was actually going for. And in that scene that you're talking about, Chris, with the interview, like Max says when they ask him, like, oh, like, are you just making these, why do you have this kind of TV? Like, do you think it's bad? And he basically says it's a matter of economics. And it's very clear that that's how most, Fox News and these things, sure, they're like trying to manipulate their audience, which I think is one of the takes on this film, is just, that as we get into kind of what Videodrome is, like what they're trying to do with it. But all of these TV stations, TikTok, all these things that are just pumping videos to you now, it's to make money. I mean, that's at the end of the day, that's what they're trying to do. If they can, change your behavior, make you buy more stuff you don't need, or spend more time in their algorithm.
Stay on the platform. Yeah.
Exactly.
I mean, exactly. Just keeping you glued to the platform so that they can make money off of ads.
Pure faces. I mean, it's really an evolution of like Padachevsky's network from maybe 10 years earlier, right? And it leads in, I mean, it's the same era if you think about it. 10 years later, you get Casino. And so it's just kind of like, this is the beginning of Reagan. It's the Satanic Panic. Dungeons and Dragons is bad for some reason, turning kids maybe gay, maybe communist, hopefully both. There's demons, yeah. So I think it's the kind of thing where, this movie is taking this as background and just saying, well, everyone's going to keep watching TV. There's going to be these cultural reactions. And Max Ren, the main character, James Woods, is just like whatever, right? Like he's kind of into the sexy stuff, but actually, as we quickly find out, because he starts dating Debbie Harry.
Yeah, fucking Debbie Harry. His
name is Nikki Brand. He quickly finds out that like, he's not that into it, right? He's not actually as hardcore as he thought, but he still wants to buy the show, right? He wants to license it for his tiny cable TV network that shows like mostly softcore porn. So that's actually like a little bit of a funny novum that Canada would have this channel in 1983. But like it works because you're like, yeah, whatever. Because you look at the movie opens actually with him waking up and rushing to an early morning meeting with a producer from Japan and his assistant who only speaks Japanese. And they're showing him tapes of a samurai series called Samurai Dreams. That's this period piece. But the whole reason he wants to license it is the last 2 episodes have like a lot of sex.
Yeah.
And he's like, my audience is literally going to like ignore all of them until the end. Like, well, that's how we're going to market it. It's just like watch the last 2.
Yeah.
So, to your point, it's very, from the beginning, he's this venal guy. He's not actually that into the sex. The sex is a distraction. And we actually find that out. The movie kind of tells us relatively quickly that like all of the torture snuff, like all of the things that are hinted at in the Videodrome signal are not actually that important. Like they're just, they're just an arbitrary choice to kind of get his attention, something that would stand out, which is so interesting. That's not a movie that critiques this stuff. Do you know what I mean? It's just like, yeah, whatever. That's just background. That's Tuesday.
And he also says, the James Woods character in that same interview, he also refers to what he's doing as a socially positive act. Like he's doing this for like for the benefit of like the good of the people. Like, oh yeah, like, or like TikTok could say like, yeah, we have all these algorithms because we want people to learn, this, like, sure, like, I guess so, like maybe you tell your shareholders that, but I don't think they care as long as you, again, spend time on their platform. And whatever James Woods' character can do to get people to not change the channel so they can sell more ads. That's really, at the end of the day, all he's doing for. And the one funny thing, I love the opening scene when he's meeting with the Japanese group and they pull out the briefcase and it's like a special briefcase for the VHS tapes. Like, you think it's going to be a box of money or something. No, it's just
no.
carefully crafted briefcase for VHS. I don't know. I had to just mention that.
Yeah, there's so much of that era, the 1980s cassettes and movie posters just everywhere. It's really, I don't know that much. I'm not like obsessed with Cronenberg as a human, but I get the feeling that this is a little bit of a love letter to like his experience as an auteur and rejecting some of the New York, LA stuff and going back and making this movie in Toronto and like struggling through, maybe he does identify a little bit with being this kind of hapless guy who kind of has taste and sort of knows what's going to sell. But, clearly Max Ren is not the genius that Cronenberg is, but they might have some relationship. Do you know what I mean? So again, to be generous to the character, he might have been like, yeah, okay, he's kind of into weird shit, but he's not actually like a murderer, right? He kind of knows that that's going to get people's attention.
Oh, I hadn't thought about that.
It's much like watching a Cronenberg film and then seeing a photo of David Cronenberg and you're being like, who is this neat little man? Like, you make the goopiest movies in existence.
Or David Lynch was the same.
David
just
Lynch,
like normal. They're of a similar era, that kind of like polite older gentleman where you're like, really? That's you? You're that guy? Okay.
They kind of look similar too. Like they have the same kind of hairstyle.
They got a vibe. They got a vibe going.
Yeah. Well, maybe not exactly the same, but yeah, they have that.
I think later years, definitely, when they're both like very white hair. Anyway,
Yeah. The thing I noted about just like the media channel, Max's media channel or his TV channel is simply, again, like it's for profit. It's, I also saw a lot of critiques or a lot of analysis saying like, he's trying to brainwash his audience into like, being into softcore porn or like changing their behavior around it. And I don't think he's smart enough to think that far.
Yeah. I just don't think that's, I don't even know if he's smart enough, but it's certainly just not the motive, right? Like he says, the motive, it's a business opportunity. We're trying to cut through the noise. We're trying to, get people to see things and just
and
pay
you have to
attention.
think about these loops of mediation.
Yeah.
Like, people want this stuff. And where do you get it easily? Well, nowadays you'd go probably honestly to your phone and you can look up whatever you want, right? But at the time, you would have like maybe niche cable channels. So I remember growing up, there were like fuzzed out channels that I guess had probably softcore porn. We didn't actually have any, so it was just fuzzed out. But, there were things like that, in the early 90s, I can distinctly remember. And this is, a few years earlier, but it's still of that era of like, there's mass media, there's all kinds of niches. It felt overwhelming even as a kid in terms of choice with just more or less basic cable, but it was like a lot of stuff that we sort of were interested in. Okay, what's going to happen on Dragon Ball Z? Also, what's happening on the nightly news or a sports game? It was like an overwhelming amount of information. So I think to some degree he's saying, again, this is this background of just chaos that has arisen that no one really is in control of. And I think that's one of, again, without jumping into spoilers, one of the warning signs of the movie that feels very prescient is that that's a space of disruption that different kinds of political organizations might take advantage of, in different ways, where everyone is becoming increasingly like dissociated and tuned out and zonked, whatever, metaphor, whatever weird psychedelic word you want to use.
Watching the boob tube.
Watching the boob tube, yeah.
You never hear that one anymore.
No,
that's
a good one. Don't. Yeah. I don't think people now would know what that meant if you said that. Like, what the hell are you talking about?
Yeah, I think no one associates being a boob with being a dummy anymore, which is probably for the best, really.
Yeah. Huh. I think
something
might have been a bird, but
maybe, a booby. Something that I kind of thought of while you were saying it earlier, Evan, about the goodwill mission of Civic TV, Channel 83, that whole thing. It actually, it just struck me that it's not dissimilar to how, and maybe this is jumping too far ahead in the future, but it's not dissimilar to how OpenAI recruited developers in their early days. When they were like, oh, this is a mission for good. We're going to change the world. We're gonna have this big, positive social impact by opening up all this information and yada yada. And then within a few years, Sam Altman was like, haha, just kidding. We're making money, baby. But there's again, just the prescience of the film, that hasn't changed, right? There's always going to be somebody that wants to exploit new technologies and wants to, exploit certain kind of content solely to make money, but will still put a positive spin on it no matter what.
Yeah, they have to make it sound good. I mean, that versus reminds me of, which maybe we talked about in the Gaddick episode for some reason. Oh no, maybe it was just because all these inventions that, come out are from publicly funded by the government, by, researchers and scientists. And then, SpaceX or whatever, then leaves and then becomes this big profitable company at the, the expense usually of the taxpayer again. Like they double fuck the taxpayer somehow. Yeah.
Well, and it's built in, and this is getting a little away from maybe Videodrome specifically, but it relates to his broader oeuvre, because I mean, it's some of the criticism that I read, we shared some articles, and some of it touched on that a lot of his movies have this idea of a scientist, kind of a mad scientist, but he always links it, I think, which makes him, again, much more relevant today and much more interesting, especially if you're a leftist, but he links it to kind of big companies in the state. So it's usually not a lone kind of Victor Frankenstein bad guy who's just doing kind of hard to explain evil. It's usually a more interesting kind of meta plot that may not be the focus. The focus is usually a human. He tells stories through sort of people's lives. And here it's, okay, this hapless producer who's kind of a jerk, his whole world devolving. But it sort of implies that, there are big companies, there are shadowy, state projects. And I think that is a theme that he explores in different ways and shows us in very weird, unexpected ways through the kind of, physical body horror mutation stuff.
Yeah. I also think that he plays around a lot with the fact that it takes states a while to kind of grasp new technologies, and it leaves this kind of gap where corporations and corporate bodies can kind of jump in really quickly. And then you basically just get fucking anarchy out of that. Not with a good capital.
But to what I was saying, that is the pipeline, right? Like the research pipeline. There's the license of technology. Sorry, the Office of Technology Licensing at a university exists to help state-funded research. Like researchers get grants, or they used to before Trump, I guess. Now it's all dying. But tier 1 research universities is to get all this money, do research, applied research, and then basically they would license it to startup companies, often who would have on the boards as the chief science officers, or in some other position, the professors. But the entrepreneurs would take it to the market. And, 9 times out of 10, the tech startups, they don't work. But that 10th time, they become a whole new industry, let's say. So that's the theory. And from the government's perspective, this worked really well. It was like a way to spend money wisely in the years after World War II. It was we, the government, do not have enough doctors in Bethesda to make all the vaccines. But if we just let people make some money off it, they will be incentivized. So this is not me as a communist saying this is great, but you can kind of see the theory of okay, we've just figured out a lot of things about, killing microbes. Let's try to do more of that. How do we incentivize it? But it gets really out of hand when? Right around this time, right around 1980. So this movie is still of that piece of okay, governments like the U.S., especially the U.S., but even, I'm sure Canada as well, are funding research, and it's getting translated. They use these terms. They translate the research out of the university into the market, and then it can scale up and all these things. I'm putting air quotes. It can do more good, whatever. But that's not a flaw. That's a feature. And I think that is a question, Chris, of where does the chaos emerge? Is that itself chaotic, or has it become chaotic? I don't know. I think that's an interesting question the movie asks in a weird way, again, by showing you a guy whose whole experience is falling apart. The hallucination makes it seem very chaotic, but if you broke it down as to who made Videodrome and what is it doing to everyone else, screw this one guy, I think it's an interesting question around what we're supposed to take away from it.
Yeah.
I keep feeling like I'm going to spoil it. So
I'm going to jump slightly ahead and just tell me if the science thing reminded me. So during that interview that he has at the beginning, he's with Nikki Brand, who's sort of this S&M radio host. And then there's also this other person named, was it Dr.
Brian O. apostrophe Oblivion. Yes.
I couldn't remember who was Dr. or Mr., but Dr. Oblivion. And they show him on a TV. He's not in the studio, which is important, very shortly after this you learn. And he's kind of going through, kind of talking about these sort of very, I don't know, sort of in a sort of a very philosophical way. And we see now that Max really needs to track down Videodrome, and he thinks that maybe he can get to it, and learns that it's actually from Pittsburgh. It's not from actually from Malaysia. And he goes to track down Oblivion because he thinks he has a connection to Videodrome. And what I was getting to is this strange homeless shelter where they basically bring people in to just watch TV all night. And I'm trying to understand, or I'm curious what you both make of that as this sort of, I'll just spoil this part here. So we learn right after this that Dr. Oblivion is actually dead. He had died because of a brain tumor, and he got this brain tumor because he also was exposed to Videodrome. And now he has these tapes that are essentially his library of his conscious, I guess. It's almost I think of this maybe in a cyberpunk way of putting his mind into a computer where he can live on, but instead it's just VHS tapes, because that's the technology that they have in this film. But I guess I mentioned a few things. What do you make of that weird shelter that he's using to show, unhoused people videos? And it's very, I didn't know how to kind of wrap my mind around that.
Yeah. I don't know. I think a part of it almost felt like a shock value thing when it's first introduced in a way. But then when you learn more about Oblivion's relationship to Videodrome, and again, I don't want to really spoil anything if we're doing it sequentially, but Yeah, as you learn more about his relationship to Videodrome and how it was created and all that, it feels like he's trying to reverse engineer it in some ways on these people. And much like a lot of cults, much like a lot, like, you see this with like the Jesus freak movement in the 60s, you would find people that were destitute. You would find people that needed a place to stay. And then that became the cult over time. And it kind of rings of that. It's like, you find the most desperate people, offer them anything, but then like you have carte blanche to do whatever you want kind of after a certain point.
But counterpoint, I think these are, so it's called the cathode ray mission, and it's run by Professor Brian Oblivion's daughter, Bianca Oblivion. And I think, and we see her later, again, without spoilers, she serves a kind of anti-Videodrome, anti-bad guy role that makes you think she has some positive, at least a different conception of kind of technology and people and freedom and minds and all these things. So she has a different philosophy, like her dad, than the Videodrome people. And Max is kind of caught in the middle because he expressly, and this comes out over lunch with a softcore porn producer he's friends with, this older woman named Masha, he sort of has no philosophy, right?
Yeah.
She sort of says, you got to realize like they're dangerous because they're political. They have a philosophy, the people who make Videodrome. That's the first thing we really learn about it, other than we're told it's a signal from Malaysia that's been pirated. Then we learn it's actually from Pittsburgh. So he's kind of getting deeper and deeper. He goes to the cathode ray mission. And I think there's a reading of this, which, to your point, I think it's supposed to look like that. It's supposed to look like a cult. But if you think through it, if from Bianca Oblivion's perspective, she says she's like helping people reintegrate. She's giving them a chance to participate in society. And again, if you think about it from the movie just taking on the idea that we're going to watch more and more video content, and like that's life, then she's kind of right. You know what I mean? Like people need to feel like they're part of culture. And she's saying, look, I can give you soup and a place to sleep, but what you really need is to feel like you're in culture. So it is a little satirical. Like it's a joke. It's kind of a mean joke. But I also think it's meant to be very real in a way. And I think if you think about like, Evan, you're saying about Oblivion, he's made himself into 10,000 VHS cassettes. And they're all sort of these short form like phenomenology lectures, but it's very much like if Deleuze knew about TikTok and was just, you know what I mean? Like, it's just like that level of like, what? Like, I want to watch all of them, but you get the sense that if you did, you would know kind of less than the beginning. Like, you'd have learned something, but you wouldn't really know like about, it wouldn't be the same as uploading a guy because it's so random and it's not quite enough. Like, it's not his whole brain. It's just like, I have this deep thought about the retina. It's all like kind of Marshall McLuhan, Guy Debord nonsense. So I think it's kind of a weird place that is, like a lot of the movie, kind of ambivalent. Like, as the movie goes on, to me, it takes on this kind of salvific role, but also like maybe it's because the guy's hallucinating. You're seeing it through the mind of a man who's losing his mind. So it's like, oh, I don't know. Maybe it is bad, to your point, Chris. Maybe it is just a cult. But I don't
think it's necessarily bad. I just think that that's the model that it's operating off of.
No, you're right. That's the model of how that's organized. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I slightly went out of order where he first goes to Oblivion and talks to Bianca, and then he goes home with a new tape that he gets about Videodrome, and then he has like I think one of his largest hallucinations, which I think we should also talk about, and then he goes back there because he's now so disturbed by all this, and that's when I think she reveals that Dr. Oblivion had died from brain tumors and gives him a bunch of like tapes from the library to be like, here, just watch these tapes and you'll like understand everything, and it's very strange. But the very large, I believe this is when, I think I'm correct, is between those two incidents and Max goes home and he's watching a new Videodrome tape. I believe he's hallucinates that he's talking again to Nikki like through the TV, but he's also then for the first time has one of the best like body horror, practical effects scenes in like maybe any of Cronenberg's films outside of like The Fly, perhaps, is his chest begins to open up, like his belly button, which very clearly is meant to be a vagina, I think is what it is. And
it's hard to see it as anything else.
Yeah, it's impossible to see it as anything else. And then he also has a gun in his home and he puts the gun inside and then it's like lost. It doesn't come out. And like, again, this is from his mind, his hallucination.
The whole scene though, because this is really great. So the movie opens, the actual cowcatcher is his secretary, Bridie, on TV saying, "Good morning, it's Civic TV." We pull back and we see that it's not a woman. It's clear because we can see the kind of lines, right? We see the scan lines. Okay, it's a cathode ray old TV. Okay, he's watching TV, but he's asleep. It's 4:30 a.m. or whatever. His secretary records every night, it turns out, a little welcome message that wakes him up early, where she just kind of says, these are the things on your docket today. These are the people you're meeting with. So it opens with her. We don't really know who she is. We learn later, okay, she's the secretary. She records these welcome messages. She goes to his apartment to check on him and give him the next day's tape of like, here's your welcome message and your itinerary. And he fantasizes slapping the shit out of her.
Yeah.
And
He's
then
pretty vicious.
He apologizes and it's very striking. It's very much like, my wife and I are watching and we're like, oh shit, it's like in the modern visual idiom, it's like, what is going on here? It's a domestic abuse scene. But she's like, hey, what's wrong? Like, why are you apologizing? And you realize he didn't do anything. He just is standing there picturing sort of S&M scenes playing out endlessly, and nothing's actually happened. He's just standing there holding a cassette. She leaves, and that's when he hallucinates I want to call it Chekhov's vagina dentata. Like he has this horrible ribcage vagina, and you're like, oh, this is gonna slap. Like whatever happens with the new orifice is gonna be awesome. And yeah, he bought a gun earlier that day, and he sticks it in there, and then it's like he's scratching an itch. Like it's like a need to stick a gun in his vagina.
I was gonna say Cronenberg does a kind of like amazingly subtle job of foreshadowing so many of the hallucinations. Like he's scratching his stomach for several scenes before that even happens.
Yes.
And they just kind of mention it offhand where he's like, oh yeah, I don't know, I'm a little itchy, whatever. It's like, no.
And not only that, but I noticed in this time, maybe it was like watching more carefully, there's a scene before he actually, has that hallucination where you do see his stomach is fine. And then you see like a little line.
Yes.
And then the next time they show it again and it's opening up. So it's almost like they were, as you said, like foreshadowing that, but then it's almost like it's happening like in this very slow and then immediate, sense. And then also the thing that I was thinking about too with with him slapping or thinking he slapped his secretary, it seemed, I don't know what Cronenberg was maybe trying to say, because the original video that they watch and the videos of Videodrome is of, violence, of hitting women and, beating them.
It's snuff TV. Like
yes, exactly.
It's just a snuff film. Yeah.
And it seems like he's now being, influenced by those things. And maybe that's on a surface level, you could say like, oh, does TV violence cause you to be violent? And, the answer is definitely it does not. But in a way, it's almost ironic to make a film, as Cronenberg did, about does TV violence make you violent in a film that is violent and like, I don't know, this like circular.
I mean, again, that's why I called it playful ambivalence earlier, is because like I think he really is truly ambivalent about it. He doesn't know, but he's playing in that space, and it makes it super interesting.
But I think it's the program. I think, again, it's hard to say without spoiling it, but I think that's the reason they picked that, is because of what the Videodrome makers, the programmers, want out of him. So you know what I mean? If they wanted him, let's say, to knit the world's softest sweater, they would have been beaming into his head Lamb Chop's Play Along from the same era. You know what I mean? But instead, they're showing snuff and BDSM, and he's kind of getting into it, and you realize he's losing control. Mm-hmm. I think, you know what I mean? Like, I think that's again part of the plot, actually, in a way that one of the great things about this movie is it's short and very subtle. I will give Gattaca that, and I think they're similar actually in these biopunk movies, that like there's not a lot of wasted effort. There's not a lot of there's no boring scenes. It's just like boom, 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 boom. You almost miss it, and you have to watch it a bunch of times to be like you said,
89 minutes.
He's scratching his stomach. It's 89 minutes. Yeah, that's you can watch it twice in a row.
Movies, like a tight 90-minute movie is like, it's like unheard of almost now. Like you don't see them. And if they do, it's usually like a kid's movie, maybe an animated movie. But like most films now like teeter on that just under 2 hour mark or, hour 50 something. And he does a lot in that 89 minutes.
Also, speaking of quick things that you have to watch, did y'all catch that when he starts watching the tape of Oblivion in his home, Oblivion addresses him directly? He says his name at least once. Yeah. He says Max. And so it's so cool the way that they did the slow, subtle transition into some of the hallucinations where it's just like, this could just be dialogue. I don't know.
Yeah. And the early hallucinations too were like just like the tape kind of flutters. He looks at like his what do you call it? Like the console where his TV is, like shimmers, and it's
Mm-hmm.
all of like the very early, hallucinations he has. Like it could be chalked up to just he doesn't sleep at all. Like, oh, I'm just like seeing shit because I'm not sleeping. But then he's like, oh, well, now I have like, I'm sticking a gun inside of my chest cavity. It's now a vagina. So, something else is happening.
And he drinks a lot. And at night, he's usually like having sex with Debbie Harry and like piercing her ears. Quite like there's the early movie is like just implying a kind of dude. And then as he breaks down, I think you are meant to one of those things. I also think it's really great because most, like in real psychology, as far as I know, most hallucinations begin with auditory hallucinations, and you start to hear things about yourself, like rumors. And that's like one of the most, so I think it's kind of telling that like as he watches TV, it starts to be about him, but it's like you said, it's subtle. It's just someone kind of turns to him and so you almost miss it because it would make sense. This guy does send messages. You just think about it for 2 seconds. The guy's been dead.
Yeah.
How could he have sent this message,
Yeah. And I think that this is kind of where the film, I would say, takes a turn, and we'll get close to, like uncovering what Videodrome is. And he gets a call, I believe, from the producer of Videodrome. His name is Barry Convex, who owns the Spectacular Optical Corporation, which is also just a great name.
Dude, Convex.
And, he's
is so good.
Yeah, it's like if you were like I was trying to think of another funny, last name of something to then what your job will dictate, because
it's like if you're a janitor and your name was Mike Broom, it's like,
exactly.
Come on, it's so good.
Exactly. And so he sends like a limo for him to come out. And we also, I love that in the limo, they then introduce to him to this everything through like watching a video in the limo.
Yeah.
Like it's just,
he has to watch a video again. It's so good.
Which presumably, probably, even though it's like a commercial about the corporation, I have to believe that he's actually also watching a Videodrome coded video in the limo.
Yeah, that's what I assumed.
This is also where like one of the most interesting lines, and I remember when I watched this maybe a year ago, that just kind of like not blew me away, but just kind of like changes the way that the film is. And Convex says, or whoever it is in the video basically says that the company makes, glasses for people in the third world, and they make, the lenses, missile guidance systems for NATO.
Guidance systems.
Yeah. The two like complete opposite things. Like, oh yes, we're the good guys. We make glasses for people who are poor. And then we also make the thing that allows, the NATO to just, overthrow governments and kill people. And basically it's just an arms company as well.
And I have to say, like, from a just purely movie perspective, like the movie so far has been set either in Max's apartment, which is like a kind of nice loft, like dark loft crowded with movie stuff, and like it's just unkempt and whiskey bottles, or his office, which is like, in a skyscraper in Toronto downtown. And now we're at the world's shabbiest, crappiest optometry office.
Yeah,
it's just like a normal place you get glasses. And it's the home of like this vast sort of Rand Corporation beyond conspiracy. And you're like, wait a second, you do glasses for the third world, missile guidance systems for NATO countries, and you also just run a single optometry clinic in like downtown Toronto that's open all night. I was like, this is rad. This is amazing.
It's so funny.
You know what I also love about Max's apartment, and I noticed this is like a very 80s thing, is by his doorway, he has those like semi-opaque stone glass bricks.
Yeah.
I don't know if you noticed that, which is such a like 1980s, kind of petty bourgeois kind of like apartment house, or I don't know. I just love that as a choice.
It screams cocaine for sure.
Oh, yes.
But also,
I assume he does cocaine.
Probably completely inconsequential, but also, did you notice that his bedroom doors are the flag of New Mexico?
I didn't.
Yeah, they're like the sun symbol of New Mexico, done in like a stained glass kind of thing, which I don't think says anything about the film, but I just found it intensely distracting, personally.
There had to be a reason for that. Like maybe I don't know.
Cronenberg loves New Mexico. He's like, man, Toronto's too cold.
He has this kind of petty bourgeois artist sense of him. Like he probably did an MFA. He probably knows all the art movies from World War II to, 70. And after 70, he's in the corporate world and just felt like he probably is kind of basically like us, but doesn't become a leftist. Do you know what I mean? And he doesn't, it's like he becomes a successful, bourgeois like business owner, right? He's one of the 3 owners of this small news network, cable TV network, but still it's a cable TV network. They have like dozens of employees and all this equipment and stuff. So like he's not rich, but he, so I get the sense he was like an artist, but I actually like that Cronenberg never shows his coke. We don't know anything about Max's background. He doesn't say anything about art. He's just licensing porn, fucking Debbie Harry. That's when that's his day to day when we meet him.
But I don't know, have either of you seen the film Alphaville?
I have not.
Yes, a long time ago.
Yeah, I watched it not that long ago, just kind of random. I think it was on Criterion, and Cronenberg lists that as like one of his early, like most influential films. And I don't want to give away the film. It's kind of also would be like a really interesting and relevant film now, but it has like the vibe of this, with like kind of like the shady conspiracy aspect of the glasses store that is also making weapons and these kind of things. Like he seems very interested in these like corporations that are like more than they seem, which we kind of see, as we'll get to in a minute, of the homeless shelter is like more than it seems. All these things are like hiding something within, and shadow conspiracies. It seems like kind of not like the main plot of this film, but it kind of has that backdrop.
Well, it's very much, and I'll keep it brief, but I love this genre, but it's very much the 60s, 70s psychedelic conspiracy, near future SF of like Thomas Pynchon and Robert Anton Wilson. And there's a lot of that in there too, but I think you're right. It is like an homage to Alphaville, which I haven't thought about that movie in a long time, but I now want to rewatch that. But I think there's a lot of just conspiracy in his movies in general, and Videodrome doesn't start that way, but gets real conspiracy-y real quick.
Yeah, very quickly.
Yeah, and as we learn, like when he goes to to meet Barry Convex, and he's kind of just like showing him his, his little, as you said, like the shabbiest, crappiest, like it looks like a lens crafters basically, and
it looks like a lens crafters that's about to shut down.
Yeah, and then like the back room, which you'd think would like be all nice, is actually just looks like a crappy storeroom too. Like it's not even nice. And then we like the thing that then happens is like another one of these, the fantasies and the hallucinations get even more pronounced, where he wakes up thinking that Masha's dead body is next to him, like covered in blood. He calls Harlan, who is the guy at his his news station or TV station that found Videodrome and originally, makes him come over to his house, and he sees no body. And he's like, Max is like kind of freaking out at this point. He doesn't understand what's going on. He doesn't, these hallucinations are getting worse, but he doesn't really realize, I don't think, what's happening. He's unable to his what's real and what's not is just gone.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he's been reduced. And so the movie does touch on the classic Manchurian Candidate reprogramming literature, which is not real. Like, it doesn't really work like this, but this was a huge topic at the time, where the CIA had invested a lot of money. They had Harvard psychologists working on it, and they kind of thought it would work like this, where you could like fuck with people's brains, show them weird stuff, torture them, and then they would become blank slates, and you could like reprogram them.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, in the wake of the Kennedy assassination and all the weirdness of the assassination of the assassin, it's not just the conspiracies. It's also like, who are these people? Like, who is the kind of guy who does this for these very weird reasons, where like he's not a leftist, but he's also not like openly at least part of the deep state. He's just like a schlub and killed by another schlub. So, I feel like this movie is taking that, 20 years later and moving it kind of into SF. And what's so great is the visualization, is showing us the deprogramming and reprogramming as a guy getting like a crazy rib vagina dentata and like a gun hand. It just like, it's way ahead of its time. And it's almost like more like Akira, in the way that it shows that reprogramming stuff, of the paranoia and the becoming a blank slate and like, what do I do with myself, in the back of a lens crafters.
And this like maybe going back slightly, but one of the other things that I think we maybe learn from Dr. Oblivion, or he kind of like alludes to in his videos, is that the Videodrome like gives you a tumor, which causes you to have the hallucination. And then it's sort of, but his belief, Dr. Oblivion, was that it wasn't that it's giving you a tumor like a cancerous tumor. It was like creating a new organ to like change your reality.
Yeah.
And a lot of the articles that I was reading too talked a lot about this aspect of like TV as being this like new reality. And maybe that's part of going back to the homeless shelter. I think, I don't know, maybe what you were saying, the, what they were doing there and kind of reintegrating these people. Maybe it's giving them a new reality, because what their reality that they're used to is terrible, and they're introducing a new reality to everyone. But then they also say that like reality is less than TV.
Yeah.
So it's like this very strange, almost confusing in the sense of like, what is reality? And I think that Max is like living this actually in his head, where he doesn't know what is reality. Like, is TV reality? Is like what I watch on my phone that's happening across the world in like Gaza, for example, like, is that actually, you know, all these things are just tossing around in everybody's head and no one knows what's real anymore. It's like fake news.
No, that's such a good point. It's exactly, though, my experience of just working a corporate job. Because if I walked into the office and said, I had this crazy dream, or I had this deep thought about like something that happened when I was a kid, or I'm really worried about Gaza all the time, or I'm worried about World War III with Iran, you know, not with her, you know, but because of, you know, some trumped up wag the dog thing that's going to lead to war with Iran as a pretext, they would be like, that's cool, bro, I'm going to go back to work. But if I said, did you see the latest episode of Murderbot? They would be like, oh, yeah, I love so-and-so who was also in this other show. You know, it's like TV is more real for the normcore bourgeoisie discourse of just like workers, you know, at the end of the empire, kind of in the apocalypse. It's actually easier to talk to people about fake things than real things. Yes. And not all the time, not everyone, of course. My experience of like working in a normal office at a boring day job is very much that.
And not even just that too, is like you could watch a show that is completely fake. Like another example like is Andor, which has a very like revolutionary and like, you know, I thank my lucky stars that they even were allowed to make that show. Like it's like almost amazing that it exists. And I talk to people who are like normal people and talking about it, and they don't even see that. Like, I mean, they see it a little bit, but not as much. Like taking a leap. These shows have these like very revolutionary messages, but you talk to a average person, they don't even see that. So even when like the TV show is trying to make you think about things that are outside of the TV show, you still don't.
Yeah,
like it's still that's still the reality, and so it's kind of sad.
It is, but I think Videodrome's a source of hope. No, that's Chris. Yeah.
Well, I was just going to say, I was going to ask if I could admit something to the two of you, and I guess to the world, because this is a podcast.
Small slice of it.
Yeah, small slice of the world. The only slice that I care about. The line, television is reality, but reality is less than television, made me have a slight panic attack, because I started thinking about my phone and I started thinking about social media and just how easy it is for me personally to just get sucked into just scrolling on that shit. So I just deleted Instagram. I like paused the movie, took Instagram off my phone. I still have it on my computer. But yeah, I was just like, this is actually too much at this moment.
I have deleted Instagram off my phone for like, a week or a couple of days. And then like,
yeah, we'll see how long it takes.
I bring it back. But yeah, it's as you watch something like this, you're like, this is what's doing. Obviously, we're not watching Videodrome and reinventing our minds, but in some ways we are, though. Like,
I mean, yeah.
I talk to some people who are younger, like in their 20s or younger, and they're like, I can't even watch a film that's like more than an hour and a half, like let alone I can't even watch a film. And, that's, partly because of the culture of TikTok, short videos, quick hits. That's what you want. You want like that quick adrenaline, then it's gone. Then a new one hits you 10 seconds later. Whereas a movie, you have to, pay attention for longer. And there's, build up and all these things. And it just, I don't know. I don't know if this directly relates, but.
No, to me, this is the point of the movie. Yeah. Like, I think this is the theme of Videodrome, the movie, and it's not the conspiracy plot or the body horror. While I really think it's a really well done 90-minute conspiracy Pynchon-esque, movie, and it's also the beginning of modern, like, biopunk body horror stuff. Like, this is the movie. Also, I guess The Fly and Shivers and all this other stuff, but this is the one that, the cult hit. But I don't think that's the theme. I think the theme is what Bernard Stiegler, the really famous French phenomenologist who I think recently passed away, but his whole shtick, Technics and Time, his whole, thing as a philosopher was like, it's not necessarily these technologies are just bad. It's not like social media is going to kill us. It's just changing how attention spans work.
Yeah.
And if we don't do something about that, you're going to have a generation of people who cannot think thoughts for long periods of time. Like they can only think in short bursts. Because you learn how to think a certain way. So he was like a philosopher of technology and like an educator and someone who studied the history of technology and just wrote these really long, wonderful, I think, books and a bunch of like short, more polemical, like easy to read pop philosophy books, but all about the same subject of just like, what is happening in the culture as we shorten attention spans? And he had like a really firm basis in like, big name philosophy people. But I think the takeaway is Videodrome, right? It's like we're doing things to ourselves through media that no one had totally planned on. Might be taken advantage of in a Videodrome, the movie-esque fashion by some organization or another, but like are definitely changing us. And I think one thing the movie really asks is like, can this be recuperated? Like, is there anything good here, or is it just is it a dystopia?
Yeah.
And I think that's all the way to the end. The movie's, to me, pretty ambivalent about that. Like, it's not totally clear. It's not a happy ending, but I would argue it's not necessarily like the saddest ending. But I think this is the theme of the movie, you know, is like, we don't know what we're doing to ourselves.
Yeah.
You know?
And even worse than that is like, there was just an MIT study about people who use ChatGPT, and it's like, basically causing your brain to just like degrade where you can no longer have actual thoughts. People who just spend like, they treat people who treat ChatGPT as just Google for everything, like their work, their personal life, and those people's brains are degrading to the point where you might start hallucination. I don't know, like not to the point of, maybe you're not putting like a gun inside of your stomach vagina, but you're having, you're unable to have like meaningful relationships with people because you can't like have critical thoughts anymore. And like, that's almost like this to the next horrible, level. And it's,
it's like becoming cyborg, like prosthetics. Like, what if we became more technological, and what would that mean? And I think there was a moment with like Terminator through Donna Haraway of like, that could be cool. Like, okay, I get a metal hand. Metal hand seems cool. But this is what it actually looks like, is the ChatGPT graduations. I don't know if y'all have seen those where the kids hold up their laptops.
Yeah, they're holding up their laptops.
They show the ChatGPT instances that did all their work for them all semester to get them whatever valedictorian, and it's just like that's the world. That's the real cyborg. It's like that kid doesn't know that information. They know how to get a computer to do it, but they don't actually know any of the things. They haven't practiced it, and we don't know. I mean, in a way, like what that means. Just that's it. That's the world.
Yeah.
One of the other big things that happens sort of the end, I think, when he goes back and he meets, Harlan at the studio, and Harlan kind of reveals that he's been working, with Convex the whole time. He's like undercover, he never actually watched Videodrome, which is like also a great twist, that happens. And you don't realize that. And the line that Harlan says to him when he's at the studio and he's kind of admitting to all this, he says, like, we're going to have to be a pure and direct and strong country. And like the immediate like thoughts I had, this is again right after Ronald Reagan is elected, they want to change the way that American perception is around. I think he says North America.
He says North America,
because he's in Canada. But we could you could surmise that it's America. Again, they reference NATO, so clearly it's just like these whole things. But to me, that was like a direct link to like NATO, and then not to NATO, to Reagan, and then just kind of like what American foreign policy needed to be this strong hand, as opposed to kind of like sitting back and being more isolationist. And I don't know if Cronenberg was being intentional on that or what he meant by the strong thing, but it took me as like, this has to be the Reagan era that they're...
Well, he also says pure. I mean, it's
pure,
very much Nazi rhetoric, and it's definitely rhetoric Reagan used. It's definitely rhetoric Trump uses.
Yeah, I was going to say it's just something that you could hear again scrolling on TikTok today, right?
Yeah, just Nazi rhetoric.
Yeah, and that's what Videodrome is. Unspoiled spoiler. Like it's a program by the far right to like program citizens using their televisual addiction, and it's experimental and whatever, and they're using Max Ren to test it and using his network to eventually broadcast it. But it is a political conspiracy theory story at heart. Like if you took away the mutant stuff, it would be like, a thriller.
Do you like, would you, and then sort of like what ends up like sort of the climax is you think that the Convex is like trying to recruit Max to do what, they want, whatever it is that might be. But then Bianca sort of tricks him to come back to their cause to kill Videodrome and kind of, avenge her father's death. And all of this, I kept thinking of, you mentioned, Wythe, the reprogramming kind of thing. To me, it just, like, the thing that stuck out to me was just MK Ultra and all of these kind of things they're doing. And clearly everyone wants, the hand of death, or, the soldier that can kill for their side of the, the war, whatever that cause is. And in this case, he goes to this, this convention and kills Convex, and his body just, has like also the most awesome scene where he just rips it open, like tears and tumors, and it's super gross. And I think you mentioned also that his hand is now infused with the gun. It just kind of looks like the coolest, I don't even know what to describe it as. It's like somewhere
between like I think Wythe bringing up Akira makes a lot of sense. Like the fusion of technology and flesh, but it has like a real trauma vibe to me. There's a few moments in the movie where it's like, oh, this is like a trauma film right now. The handgun, also the extraordinarily phallic gun that comes out of his television earlier in the film.
Yeah. Well, it looks like the H.R. Geiger penis mouth that is the Harkonnen castle in Dune. The original stuff for Alien that was developed for Dune, where it's Giger. But it's like that confusion of like, wait, is that a dick? Oh, it's a mouth.
Yeah.
Oh, it's actually a shuttle. Like it's doing a technological thing. And I think that's what's so enduring about these images from Dune and later Alien and Blade Runner and then sort of independently, Cronenberg, is that they invert the sort of James Cameron stuff, the Terminator, Avatar stuff of like encasing flesh in steel protects it from hard vacuum. It's like, no, screw that. I'm going to have a gun wrapped in a liver. And you're like, why would that be on my hand? I don't know. Just, it's so disturbing. It's like endlessly, you dream about it. But to your point, it is actually kind of the cool moment. It's the moment when he's reprogrammed or freed by Bianca. And again, you can read it different ways, but he sort of fights back against the Nazis basically and shoots them. So, in a way you're clapping. You're like, explode that Nazi into tumors somehow. Maybe it's a hallucination. I don't know, but
turn that one guy's hand into a World War II era German grenade.
Oh, yeah. He uses the ribcage vagina dentata that has been sitting on the proverbial mantle the whole time to bite off Harlan, his assistant, who had hacked into the signal for Videodrome, but now we know was just feeding him, this information. But he bites off his hand. And that to me was the climax in terms of like the visual nonsense. It was just like, what is like, you kind of have to laugh.
Yeah. They really jumped the shark in that moment, but it doesn't like as a viewer, it didn't bother me. I thought it was amazing.
No.
And like specifically to replace his hand with a grenade was so fucking funny. It's like this inverse of the gun hand, right? It's like using the same processes and technology, but just, intentionally instead of having it happen to you.
Yeah, I think Mike Takashi and just weapons coming out of nowhere. Yeah. Like, where did that come from? Whatever, it's cool. They have weapons. But yeah, so I think there's a real thing where it's a cyborgification, but it's not the cool, sleek, hard SF version. No. It's a different version that now I think, again, anachronistically, we could say it's biopunk or something like that. And I think there's a chance there for us to think differently about what technology is and does. And what are the dangers? And it's a little bit different than the usual, the government or a corporation will make armies of super soldier droids to shoot us, which we see they're trying to do that, Boston Dynamics, drones, whatever. But there's also this way in which, again, like we watch TV, we become changed by it. Our bodies change as we sit all day. And there's other things happening, you know what I mean, that aren't that very easy to sort of see, let's make a cop bot,
What do you then make of sort of like the very last scene of the film as he goes onto this sort of like old boat where he sees Nikki now on television, basically talking directly to him, where there's another moment where like, is this reality? What's reality? What's TV? TV has become reality and is kind of used like the famous line is like, he must leave the old flesh. And then he says, long live the new flesh, and he kills himself with his, mutant gun hand. Like, what do you make of the sort of the idea of new flesh, and how would this necessarily defeat Videodrome? Is that because he's like defeating the thing that killing himself is like the weapon that they were trying to create, and by killing himself, he's like, depriving them of this weapon? Or
the implication that Nikki makes is that by killing himself, he frees himself and then can fully embody the new flesh, like whatever that is truly. Right. But like, he has to end his own life to take on the next step of the transformation. And only then can he defeat Videodrome. Because she says it really clearly. It's like, you wounded them, but it's not over. Like you have to go a step beyond in order to finally end it. And whether or not that happens, well,
and I think, again, we talked about it last time, actually talking about Gattaca and how it's not like some of the better SF that comes right around that time a little later, but it reminded me a lot of The Matrix, the end of The Matrix, where there's a Christ moment. You're supposed to believe that Neo actually is breaking the rules of physics in a way that up until now, it's been in a hard SF universe where it sort of obeys the laws we know of physics. Is just, hey, computers have taken over, but the world is still the world. Actually, maybe Keanu is Jesus, but he's Kung Fu Jesus. This is kind of a similar moment where, like, maybe it's all hallucination, maybe it's not, but it's pretty much a guy fighting a shadowy conspiracy about reprogramming human minds through sort of hacking TV signals. But then you're asked to believe that actually, to put in Deleuzian terms, he can completely deterritorialize and then reterritorialize on the plane of the virtual. He can become the signal. And that, in a way, what Debbie Harry is saying is like, and it's striking that, Debbie Harry is the one saying it, as the ghost Debbie Harry on TV in his head is saying, if you can become not a corporeal, entity, but just pure kind of televisual media. Energy, whatever, however you want to read it, brainwaves, whatever it is. It's not explained. She just sort of says, you got to get rid of the old flesh. Then you can kind of play a bigger role in defeating whatever the badness is. And it kind of makes sense in that the badness is, this MacGuffin, this signal that can control people's brains and maybe cause new organs to form and all these things. So maybe, how much more of a jump is it to say that there's a point at which your body no longer has any sort of resemblance to the human and you've become part of something greater. So to me, it just felt like adding in that bit of religion at the end actually really, really spices it up. It's like you eat a cake and you're like, what is that thing that makes it so good? Oh, it's the cardamom. It's a little bit of, it's like something you can't quite put your finger on it. It'd probably be good if it was just a bunch of sugar, but adding that like flavor of the religious and that kind of leap of faith where we don't see it paid off, right? At the very, very end, it just cuts to black. So we don't really know, maybe he's just a sad, paranoid, schizophrenic assassin in an empty, busted out boat. But maybe he's Kung Fu Jesus. I don't, you know what I mean? That's a pretty big range.
Yeah. It's a big swing. It's interesting too, because you can see, we were talking about, Dr. Brian Oblivion earlier, transferring his consciousness in a way into videotape. You can almost see that as like a failed attempt to transition into the new flesh. So there's these kind of like different takes on it that you get to see in the film.
Right. Like 10,000 TikTok videos of you rambling wouldn't be different.
Right.
It would still be you just depositing molar instances of yourself for other people in society to pick up on. Oh, that's just Chris rambling. But what he's chosen to do at the end is something radical. And we don't know if it's worked or if he's just quote unquote crazy, but it's a great way to end because you remember it for one. It's unforgettable.
It also like takes me back to when they're kind of, he's being warned that the Videodrome and they have a philosophy, whereas Max has no philosophy, and it's almost like at the end, like, is he coming upon like having a philosophy, of what he's doing, like he's this religious philosophy or whatever the new flesh actually means, and in doing so, he's now able to like quote unquote defeat Videodrome in some way because he's actually, he's out philosophized them or something. I don't I don't know, and not in like any real sense, because again, like you said, there's no payoff. You don't know what happens. And, which actually makes it so good. Like the just, cuts.
It's beautiful. It's just the perfect way to end this movie. There's,
He could have had one more minute, but he's like, no, 89 is enough.
No, 89 is all we need, baby.
They're like, the studio's like, you need 90 minutes. Like, nope. Sorry.
It's a prime number. Dropped mic. Yeah. Well, it makes me think of like the challenge leveled by like xenofeminism or these kind of radical, like Anne Foster Sterling talking about 5 genders, or sort of the idea of like what if we thought of bodies radically differently, and what would that do for culture to sort of really break things down and not sort of go from one end of the binary to the other, but to just blow up the whole system. And I think, again, it's such a nice metaphor or symbol or whatever, because we don't see it. It isn't clear what the new flesh is. It's not a philosophy. Cronenberg isn't trying to convince us of anything. It's just a pure image in that sense. And it feels like a very realistic world, even years later. It still feels like the real world. And he's sort of predicted these trends that have only continued. So by having that powerful, almost like Christ moment in a very real setting, it still really works as a movie, So whatever the new flesh is, I want to find it. I want to join it. I want to be, it feels very compelling to me. Other people might read it and be like, that's gross. That's weird. That guy's just a sad homeless assassin. But I read it, as a sign of hope or something.
Whatever the new flesh is, I hope it lives long.
It's existence, because doesn't Jude Law have like a weird gun in that movie too that kind of looks like the
it's the bone and flesh gun that shoots human teeth so that it can go through metal detectors.
Yes, maybe Jude Law is the new Flesh in Existence or something.
Well, I mean, you can see a direct line to Existence where again, there's an ambiguity about layers of reality that happen in that movie as well, right? Where it's like, we're in the game, just kidding, we're in the game, just kidding, we're in the game, but we're out of the game, just kidding, we're out of the game now. But then at the end of the movie, it's similarly ambiguous, where it's like, I think there's like one of the last lines of Existence is a guy, just some hapless dude who's like, "Are we in the game?" And then they fucking shoot him.
Yeah, and it's like Inception, and again, The Matrix.
Sure.
It's these movies where, which is, to me, these movies reek of like Philip K. Dick. It's that kind of sci-fi where it's conspiracy. We're not sure if this is sort of a religious, oh my God, the veil has been ripped off. I'm seeing the real and not the fake real that the Gnostic kind of evil fake God wants me, is programming me to see. And I think all religions have that sort of play of like, what is real and how do we get to the real, the dope stuff, the esoteric truths, and how would that look translated into the world of like mass media or TikTok or whatever. And so it's you see these little kind of inklings of it, but I think we're seeing more and more of that as people are kind of sick of whatever the daily experience is and they're looking for some answer. And I think Videodrome, again, is great. It doesn't really try to give you any specific answer. It just says, I don't know, maybe one's out there. To me, it's also saying it's going to be surprising. It's not going to look like something you can predict. It might look like a weird flesh gun. Who knows? It's going to look weird.
It's funny you said that you mentioned Philip K. Dick, because I did see on his like Wikipedia page that's listed as one of his like later influences, not maybe like when he first started getting into sci-fi and things like that, but that's apparently he did read all the Philip K. Dick and all of those, which makes complete sense to me.
Yeah, and somebody in one of the essays had mentioned Total Recall being around. I think it's a little later than this, but not much later, right? I think there's a lot of and that's
I actually think it's later. I think it might be like 91 actually.
Oh, is it? Okay. But I think that was maybe a moment. I forget when Philip K. Dick died, but I think he wrote a lot, and I think it's being discovered, and people are kind of making these movies.
I think right before this, he died in 1982.
Oh, okay, interesting.
Yeah, Total Recall is 1990.
Close.
Well, Evan,
I love that movie so much.
Yeah. But yeah, no, I think to me, this movie is so many things. It's the birth of biopunk. It's really just such a great exemplar of this new Gnostic kind of SF tradition of really questioning reality and finding new ways to question reality, new metaphors and technological metaphors that feel, to me, at least as someone, raised in a sort of secular or specifically kind of Buddhist, environment, like white guy, hippie Buddhist, that these movies feel more real, that this version feels like connects with me better than watching something where I'm supposed to sort of believe in an Abrahamic, God or Jesus or Muhammad or whomever. And so I do think it's a powerful film, even though it is also extremely goofy. Yeah. You could just watch it because it's a fun, goofy movie.
That is, it's like a weird thing that it's like you could easily watch this for like on a very surface level and just kind of think it's conspiracy and weird, and there's some like insane, body horror moments and everything. But then, I think it certainly is a lot more than that. Even if I don't know how much of this Cronenberg was going for, but needless to say, it's still awesome.
Yeah, I mean, and I think it's more successful actually even than his adaptation of Naked Lunch, which is a lot better than the book. I think maybe that's sacrilegious to say, but to the point about like his best movies, I mean, they're all good, but I think like, to me, and I don't know if y'all have seen Naked Lunch, but like the more weird it gets, there's a point where you get weird fatigue. Mm-hmm. And rewatching Videodrome, I was struck by it's just the right level of weird, and it's introduced in just the right speed. And kind of the same with Conspiracy. It sort of begins and just really steps you in from the shallow end into this weird world, and then ends right at minute 89 at just the exact right moment, goes to black. And I think that's hard. It's hard to do that. It's hard to make something and not overdo it. And I will say that as a writer, I really admire his ability to restrain himself and just do the scenes that need to be there.
Yeah, they're very lean films, but he still has a lot of nuance in how the concepts are introduced over time. And yeah, you're right. I mean, his pacing is perfect in Videodrome.
Yeah, it is hard to there's some movie I watched recently where I think my Letterboxd review was like, this is the tightest 90-minute film ever, and like this might now like be even more, Just I think it was
beats it by 1 minute.
Fargo is 90 minutes long, and I was saying like it's hard to beat like another situation where like every scene is like there's no wasted shots, there's no wasted dialogue in this too. It just goes boom, 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 as you said.
That's actually crazy because my memory of Fargo, it feels like a much longer film because so much happens in that movie.
It's mind blowing. I didn't realize that it was 90 minutes. I watched it, I don't know, maybe beginning of this year, and I'm like, holy shit, this was only a 90-minute film.
That's crazy. Well, there you go.
Yeah. But anything that you all had that we didn't get to, or
yeah, can I ask Chris a question?
Oh,
please. Very self-serving, Evan, but maybe you will. I actually like maybe both of y'all have thoughts on this. I have no idea, but Chris, we make games that basically feature mutants.
That's
we make tabletop games, and we both are huge fans of Cronenberg.
That's
I don't
true.
think we really talked about it that much, other than at some point being like, "Oh, you like Cronenberg? Cool." Do you want to say a little about making games and writing sort of scenarios and thinking about bodies otherwise and mutants in games specifically as opposed to like movies, but, you know, playable experiences where other people are the mutants or the characters or fighting mutants, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah. I think it's actually really, how do I want to say this? It's interesting and it's challenging writing games with mutations in them and having mutations be kind of like a central point of the narrative in the game. Because I think much like how you can interpret Cronenberg's work, there's levels of goofiness to it and there's levels of like serious embodiment to it. And I don't know, as a writer, it's interesting to try to find the balance between the two, you know, because some people are going to want to come to a table and just be like, I'm a weird guy. I'm a weird medieval guy with a tentacle arm now. And that's an absolutely valid way to play it. But you also want that like deeper kind of embodiment, and you want the kind of philosophical questions around like, well, what is selfhood as my body, as myself is changing over time? And I think that a lot of that comes from not really the rules writing, because that's going to be however people want to interpret it, but more from like the textual extra, diegetic stuff that you kind of put into place. But I don't know. It's challenging for sure. But yeah, I mean, I got to say, you know, like Cronenberg, Akira, Miike, all of that stuff is definitely a huge influence, more so than like zombie media, although that certainly plays a part for Dance Macabre, which you should check out on Kickstarter pre-launch right now.
Yes, well, there'll be a link in the description where you can check that out.
Hell yeah!
Just because you mentioned zombies, this is like a completely not even related to this all. But did either of you see the 28 years later yet?
I haven't seen it yet. A friend of mine saw it a couple of days ago and said that it was, I forget the film that he said specifically, but it's like a coming of age movie is what he told me. He was like, there's zombies, but it's a coming of age film. So I'm curious about it.
Yeah.
It looks great.
I would agree with that assessment. I saw it and I'm not going to obviously spoil anything here, but I would recommend it for people who like, his past films. But that's completely
for sure. I will say to the zombie thing, there was an essay. I think it was again a Criterion essay that was quite good. That I thought had an interesting point, which is that Cronenberg makes these movies that are about kind of gross bodies and horror, but they're not at all zombie-like. Mm-hmm. And the writer, whose name I want to look up because I really thought this was sort of a smart essay. I think it's Carrie Rickey had written this essay in 2010 for Criterion, had argued that, it's because Cronenberg's movies are so interior and they're about psychological transformations. Yeah. So like zombie narratives, classically are kind of white people afraid of black people, right? And then later it becomes about communism. And then Romero is commenting on those things, and satirizing them. And it becomes reversed, right? It's like, no, black people are much more afraid of white people generally, right? And then as movies go on, they become more about AIDS and then biotech and all these things, lack of healthcare, right? Like we don't know actually what's happening with our bodies and we can't access care. And by the time of 28 Days Later. But I think what's interesting is, Cronenberg's metaphors are like so weird. Like it's really hard to say exactly what Videodrome or the New Flesh is or like Existence is. It's like they're much more about psychological weirdness, and the exterior gross zombie-like mutations are not easily kind of metaphorized onto that. You know what I mean? They're not one-to-one in that way that zombie movies tend to sort of treat these things.
Yeah,
and I think
he kind of created his own genre starting with this almost.
Yeah, for sure. As we've been talking, I was reminded of there's this book of short stories that I really love called The Puppet King and Other Atonements. It's by Justin A. Burnett. It's a bunch of horror shorts, but he has this one story in there that has always really stuck with me called Destroyer, which is it's this guy who's interviewing like a black metal artist, and they're just talking. But there's this one part where they start talking about the interviewer's mother who died of cancer. And, they're talking about it, and he's talking about death, and the black metal guy is like, well, when you think about it, cancer isn't death. It's actually just an excess of life. And that's what ends up killing. And that line keeps coming up for me, thinking about Videodrome, thinking about Dr. Oblivion being like, I believe it's a new organ growing on my brain, not a tumor. But I don't know. There's something in there with that as well, with like the body horror mutations that you see in Cronenberg. Like, it's not death, it's this excess of life that's kind of like bubbling over and making itself physically manifest.
Yeah, or as Aeon Flux said, one of the lines in that show is, that which does not kill us makes us stranger. And that always stuck with me, is like, the death is only one fear, but there's this kind of deeper fear of losing a sense of self, of identity.
Yeah, it's almost like this. When you said that, it almost reminds me of some kind of like this, I don't know, evolutionary something. I can't put my finger on it. Like you mentioned, like the new organ and these new ways of seeing things, like this new evolutionary trait in some way. But I don't.
Rapid technological speciation.
Yeah, Morlocks and Eloy.
Yeah,
that's again. I think if to the degree this movie is about anything to me, it's definitely about that question of like, as these technological changes add up, what is that doing to us as individuals and as a society? I don't know. All I can think is like, do we have any control, and is there some opportunity for doing something good with these new changes, with these technologies? Is there a new flesh that is good, or is it just like, hey, we're along for the ride? Jury's out, I think.
Yeah, it certainly feels like we're along for the ride at times, but
yeah. I'm not a fan of ChatGPT, so in my head, if like I'm like, no,
thank you.
No, yeah, I don't think I want to use ChatGPT to find out the evolutionary, level that's going to happen when people are like losing their like ability to like do reasoning and cognitive, function and whatever. So, no thanks.
It's gonna be so
or like understand truth. I guess that is the scary thing of a Philip K. Dick hallucinatory Fantasiaverse, is like you don't really ever know what's true.
Yeah.
So maybe that's the ultimate warning of this movie.
I mean, again, you see it in the movie over and over.
Yeah, I mean, you could. There's probably a reading where the second half of the movie never actually happens. After he watches Videodrome, that's it. Like the entire thing is a hallucination. He's just lying on the floor of his room.
He's just listening to Blondie the whole time. That's he never even met Nikki Brand.
That's the secret director's cut.
Yeah, like he could have been like listening to her on the radio because doesn't she have a radio show? Like,
she's like a radio. She's like a radio therapist. She's like Frasier, but
she's like a sex therapist. I think.
Yeah. It seems like it's specifically sex therapy. The one caller that called in, she kept on calling lover, and then that gets repeated later in the movie. That was genuinely creepy as hell, I thought.
Yes, that was creepy. Like they don't really do much with that other than just kind of pointing to the fact that she clearly likes to, be cut and, is into the whole S&M, which he then later obliges her with like whipping of her, which we didn't mention, but he fantasizes of him being inside a Videodrome, like whipping her while she's on the television in Videodrome, which is also like super meta.
He's whipping the TV. I was going to ask, because you'd mentioned before we taped, you'd sent an article that's kind of about the male gaze and like these questions of the, why is there so much sex imagery, especially in the beginning part of the movie, but there isn't actually a lot of explicit sex. It's not really a movie about sex. But I thought, Evan, did you have any thoughts on what the movie is saying or playing around with there?
So a little bit. I mean, the part of, I read that article and I wanted to actually dig into some of the references that it makes. It's definitely, I almost feel like that reading of the film is almost very, I don't want to say different than what we've said, but kind of looks at it from a completely different perspective, where it is taking all of the sex and all of those things and using that as like the main jumping off point as opposed to some of the other areas. And so I think it's it's useful. I'll link to this article for anyone who wants to check it out. It's called Cinema as a Generator of Desires, Cronenberg's Videodrome and Mulvey's Male Gaze Theory. So it talks a lot about the, all these kind of ways to look at it through like bell hooks and, other areas. So it's kind of a much different reading. And like a lot of the things that I did notice, I then saw in this, like they specifically talk a lot about like the red dress as kind of this like distraction during that original, video and all these things. If you look at them in a different perspective, there is this need to look at from the male's perspective. I mean, that's really what Max is creating, right? He's creating a TV show that's primarily for men.
Right.
But then it's sort of like, that is sort of broken when we see that Nikki is also into these things. So it's kind of like breaking that narrative or that concept that only men want to look at women. It's like also women want to look at women or other men or whatever. So
yeah, I forget her line. When he points out the dress during the interview early on in the film, she has a line.
I think I wrote it down.
It's very good, but it's something like.
No, I didn't.
I can't remember. Cut this part.
I don't have the line, yeah.
I can't remember it either. I remember being struck by it. Maybe I wrote it down.
Yeah, and that's where, because I mean, in theory, she's there because of the right-wing conspiracy guys to set up Max. But I think, again, it's hard. It's like if you only read it one way, it's less interesting. It's kind of more interesting if she also has a lot of her own agency.
Yeah.
And it's almost like the movie's plot changes as Max's hallucination happens. So like maybe the conspiracy theory, like you said, Evan, maybe it's all a dream kind of a thing.
Yeah.
Or we're just never really sure. So like maybe he did have a girlfriend. Maybe she is just on vacation somewhere else. Like, it could range. But yeah, I mean, definitely that reading of kind of the purpose of that character and the whole first third, really, that article was interesting. It definitely made me think of kind of I mean, again, just thinking about Deleuze and stuff, the idea of libido as like a word that we throw around in this kind of vernacular sense of like sexy energy, but it really means in philosophy this kind of just energy to create, to like use humanity, like your time on earth to do stuff. And the fact that there's a libidinal economy, like an economy of attention and like pursuit of desire. And that at the end of the day, this movie is about hacking that total economy. So it uses sex imagery. It uses like the vernacular version of libido to get at this deeper idea of like hijacking human spirit in total. Not just about sex, but about just any desire to do anything. And I think that flip feels, for whatever reason, really natural. Like it makes kind of sense in a very basic way that it's like, oh, it's about sexy stuff. It's a secret sexy stuff thing. And then you're like, oh no, this is like a really dark idea about kind of hijacking the human mind. And would you know, right? Would you know if you were being messed with?
So I remembered the line, and I think it does actually directly relate to this. So the line that she's talking about the dangers of overstimulation, and then Max says, "Well, that's a very stimulating dress you have on," because he's talking about the red dress, and then she like looks him dead in the face and just says, "Of course, I'm a very overstimulated person," and then goes on to list the ways in which she's overstimulated. It's like television, movies, sex, yada yada, all this kind of stuff. So she really does own it. And I would almost argue that she has way more agency than Max does throughout the film, up to the point that she kind of disappears from the narrative as we see it.
Presumably murdered.
Presumably, maybe not. We don't know.
And what's also interesting, and the line that happens right, like after then, I think then Max like asks her out, like, I want to take you out to dinner.
Yeah,
and
on air.
Flip over to Oblivion. And of course we don't know at this time that it's a recording, but he says that the television screen has become the retina of the mind's eye. So like there are these, what was I going to say about that? I forgot. Well, I'll cut myself saying that because I can't think of why I said it, but it's somehow like, I don't know, these like, I don't know, something related to Freud, because I think he also mentions like how the dress is like, what Freud would have said if, wearing this dress too.
He does say that. He's like, what would Freud say? Smarmy little asshole.
Which is sort of funny, like being the guy who like doesn't actually have any philosophy. He's just like throwing around like, haha, Freud. I've heard of him.
Yeah. Oh, actually, an interesting thing. Again, I know I'm jumping around a lot. I'm having random thoughts now. But when he's having lunch with Masha and she says, they're dangerous, they're political, they have a philosophy. His response to that is whose philosophy, which I thought was really interesting. Not like what philosophy, but like who's controlling it? Who who are they miming in the way that he did earlier by quoting or like bringing up Freud, you know? It's still just these like empty packages, not real philosophy to him.
Because until he chooses to embrace the new flesh, it's not a leap of faith. There's not a real conviction. It's just quotations. And he went to art school. He's a member of the bourgeoisie. He knows who Freud is. He knows who Marx is. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, they're just names he can recall. He doesn't actually have any understanding of them.
Much like if you write a paper using ChatGPT.
Exactamundo.
Yes.
Well, I feel like we came full circle there.
We pretty much did. I think that everyone probably heard what you're about your podcast last time, but before we depart, do you want to remind listeners about Why We Roll? And
yeah, I think we have a few pluggables right now, if that's okay.
Oh, please.
Yeah, let's plug it. Our podcast is Why We Roll. We're both game designers. We do that thing, and we interview other tabletop game designers, specifically from a leftist perspective. We have really cool guests who come on. We have really great conversations. You should definitely check it out. We are on Apple, Spotify. I don't know, all the places you can find podcasts. Did I miss anything, Wythe?
No. Yeah, check out Why We Roll if you like games, and especially if you like game design.
Yeah.
We talk to all kinds of great people, and we have even more great people lined up.
That's true. And then also right now on Kickstarter, we are live on pre-launch for my game, Dance Macabre, which will be coming out later this year. But if you're into Cronenberg, if you're into mutations, if you're into body horror, if you are into deeply questioning faith and the self in light of your body changing and transforming and becoming new flesh, you should definitely check out Dance Macabre. It's medieval horror role-playing. So it's set in the 1390s, and you get to be fucked up mutant peasants who get to run around the countryside outside of Constantinople. So yeah, check it out. I think, do we have we'll give you a link for that, but you can see it on Kickstarter pre-launch right now.
The easy link is stillfleet.com/Danse, DANSE. That should take you there.
There you go.
Perfect. Well, everyone should definitely check that out. And I also look forward and am interested in playing this game because it's like all of these things melded into the game.
Yeah.
Thing that we're talking about here. Well, different era, I suppose, but
different era. Same vibes.
Perfect. Well, Wythe and Chris, it's been a pleasure talking Cronenberg with you both, and we will catch you all next time.
Yeah. Thanks so much, Evan.
Yeah. Thank you.
Of course.
Every hero strikes out on their adventure for a different reason.
To prove myself worthy of my mother's praise.
To write my own story and discover who I really am.
To prove to my family that I am more than they believe me to be.
To revive the God that has chosen me.
But when the fragile balance of the world is in jeopardy, and sinister forces move in the darkness, heroes will be tested, pushed to their limits and beyond. And it will be left to them to determine if they are up to the task. There is a darkness rising. Will they be able to overcome the challenges and meet this evil head-on?
For my God.
For my story.
For my freedom.
For the world.
To restore the balance. Modified Role Season 2, The Chronicles of Erin, a D&D 5e actual play podcast. New season, new characters, new story. Find us on all the usual podcasting apps or at modifiedrole.com.